Okay. I'd like to call order the regular meeting of Planning and Transportation Commission for Wednesday, 29th. Ms. Dow, could you please take the roll?
Chair Chang.
Present.
Vice Chair Reck.
Here.
Commissioner Aiken.
Here.
Commissioner Heckman.
Appearing remotely with Jessica's and no one over 18 in the room with me.
Commissioner Liu.
Present.
Commissioner Suma.
Present.
Commissioner Hilton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. So our first agenda item, public comment. Are there any speakers? I don't think so.
I have no request to speak.
And then is there an online? Take a look. Okay, great. On to agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
We have no agenda changes or deletions.
Oh, great. And then on city official reports. Ms.
Yes. Good evening, Amy French, Chief Planning Official. I wanted to, first of all, call attention to an email that I sent out before 5 days, so fairly recently, noting our transportation staff is unlikely to be able to make it tonight, but forwarded on a statement regarding the Wilk Bridge subcommittee. Some item there, I suppose I could read off. Based on the online community survey and bridge committee members' input, we will leave the anti-slip fiberglass deck strips as is and replace the rubberized coating section installed in the second area with a sharp turn with the anti-slip fiber deck strips as part of upcoming bridge project, which is going into construction in summer. I've done my bit for transportation.
I'll give you a summary there.
Okay.
Thanks, Raphael, wherever you are. I asked today, he dug that up really quickly. Way is a wooden bridge, slippery when it's wet, and he used to put rubber mats on, and those broke up and off. So they tried about a year ago, two tests. One was you would actually take some glass and screw them into the wood boards. There's a sharp curve where they did that. Another spot painted on, it almost looks like just with sticky stuff in it, non-slip. And that seemed to be almost as me. And so do that for where they have that glass on that sharp, and they're going to leave that. It's going to be good to get it done rainy season.
Okay, back to component of our item 1, which is city official reports. This gives you the breakdown that we anticipate for the summer. As you might recall, the commission decided to cancel the meeting of July 31st. So we're sending projects forward and backward from there. And this is lineup that we're anticipating for the summer. I'm not sure if the June 26th item from transportation is going to hold, that be pushed forward, but this is where we are at the moment. I wanted to note that learned.
Ms. French, did you have a slide to share for us?
Not sharing a slide?
Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Let me try again. I thought I was sharing. Share. Now am I sharing? Yay. Okay. Two. This breaks down the anticipated lineup for the summer of Planning and Transportation Commission meetings. And I was just noting anticipated dates here that kind of inflect, are always tended until we actually have the report in hand and advertise it and all that. So for now, this is what we're looking at. Note that the detailed report that we worked so hard to get through the Transportation Commission process, our subcommittee, everything to try and get it before council June 10th. That slipped to June 18th. And now I hear that the amount of items and before the council is too much, and there's some more discussion to happen. So likely we will that off till August at the council, and we'll have an opportunity as a commission to have their powwow before then, if we can figure out what forward. That would be the July 10th meeting. Okay. Does anyone have any questions of upcoming dates? As always, let me know if you're plan absence. You can take summer break. So. The next slide here is just council target dates for May, and I'd slip in there at the end, again, because of that study report. But these are the anticipated items coming for council. Note that I note here about the not viewed by the PT. Some of these items, such as the road extension, have not come to PTC, but it's interest to the Planning and Transportation Commission. So if you're presenting in June or June, this is all June. There are only a couple of these that the Planning and Transportation Commission actually saw, which was the June item on the County Avenue CUP, and the June 17th item is the bike lanes on El Camino, and of course the NCAP, which is June 18th. So, yeah.
Ms. I have a question for you. So I believe Commissioner Liu is our rep for June, but I believe he also had to recuse for NV. Is that correct? So then we should move on back up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll be.
Back up.
I am.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
that's who you are. Perfect. No questions? Then I suppose we can move on, and I will switch presentations.
So our first item for today is review and recommendation to Finance Committee and the City Council on the proposed 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan and comprehensive plan compliance.
Okay, why is not? There we go. Thinking. Okay, the presentation is thinking, and I will start presenting while it thinks. So tonight we are here to review 16 new 2025 to 2029 capital improvement projects for consistency with the comprehensive plan and forward the findings to council. The commission can also review programs as a whole and propose suggestions to improve the efficiency. Commission can also identify projects it feels missing from the existing CIP list and propose those for next year. Staff will communicate the findings of this meeting through a letter to the City Council. To assist your review tonight, answer any questions on CIPs, we have a Zoom room from different city departments. We have budget, works, utilities, police, community services. We'll see. So this is the letter that currently says from, we assume, a chair, but we now have a new chair. And so we'll fix that letter for signature. So after tonight's meeting, we'll go ahead and get that done and then forward that to City Council. So every year, the city departments identify new CIPs based on site infrastructure needs and City Council priorities. This year, 16 CIPs have been included in the capital budget. Staff has used the same analysis metrics of previous years to determine plan consistency. Each CIP is linked to a primary comprehensive plan element and a goal policy program, which it allows to. Staff has added information on types of boards, commissions, and an environmental review is required. So this slide shows 194 capital improvement projects were included in the capital budget, 6 of which are new. So these are just an attachment B of this report. And just in previous years, we focused our analysis only the projects at this time. The report in your packet said 270 cited capital improvement projects. That was kind of an error. Even there's that many projects in the system, there's only the 194 that were funded in the 25 budget book. So the other keys are continuing, have already been reviewed by the PTC in previous years. So shows that we have 5 CIPs that align with community services and facility element. And we have 5 CIPs aligning with the natural environment element, and 3 Cs that align with the safety and transportation. It's 3 for each. Some examples of building facilities, upkeep, maintenance, and technology upgrade CIPs. You can see on the screen, children's theater lighting, art center, radio replacement, and fire equipment. Then we have samples of transportation and traffic improvement, transportation improvement CIPs, which are Avenue, parking improvements, traffic intersection, accessibility improvements, and Road, Alma, railroad crossing improvements. Then we have the distribution. that shows, I think that's 32% for the natural environment, 6% for CSD, land use transportation is 8%, and then safety is 5%. So we come to the recommendation that we commission, finding that these CIPs are consistent with the comp plan and recommend council concur with the finding. Thank you. And do you have any questions for the team members? I'm just going to see, we have someone from SD and from administrative services and someone from public works and someone from fire. Yeah, several folks from those events.
Okay, so light them up. If you've got any questions, we'll start with Commissioner Reckel and then Commissioner Aiken.
I'm not sure if this is a question for Amy, for Chief Blackshaw, but one of the new ones is the eucalyptus tree removal. And looking in the funding, it's not funded this year. You know, page 13 of the big under, it lists 7 different Cs that are on the list but aren't funded at all. What status and why was this introduced not funded at all? Is it low priority?
So seeking those who are attending from other departments. Oh, excellent.
Hi, for Office of Management Budget. So this project actually is funded in fiscal 2025. So that's the first year of the year CIP that we're looking at. Fiscal year 24 will be the current year that we're in. And so what we're reviewing now is anything that's starting fiscal year 2020 and beyond as part of the new 5-year CIP plan.
Okay, but in the booklet they have, it says it's funded. You look on page 13 of the booklet.
Page 13 of the.
A big binder. Yeah, the big binder, page 13.
When I looked at the specific item, it was funded. I don't know what page it was though.
Yeah, I guess I would reference you page 212 of the capital budget, the fiscal year 25 proposed capital, but that's where the project would be.
Oh, you know, I wonder if I use a link in the soft copy, and I wonder if that's linked in an old version. Okay. Okay, that is good. That answers my question.
Lou? Commissioner Aiken?
Thank you, Chair. Question is about page 19, it's item number 5, the Stradero Creek gas line repair. And the question is which elements it might be consistent with. Found it odd that it was associated with policy in 7.1, which is specifically about electricity needs. And wondered if maybe S113.4, which is enhance the safe city-owned natural gas pipeline operations, might be a better fit. So I'm curious as to why the decision was to use in 7.1 instead.
Let's see. So we have someone from utilities. Roger, are you from utilities, perhaps? You are unmuted. Roger?
Roger is not from utilities.
Ah, sorry, I just see one word there. Well, so, sorry?
The guy maybe?
Oh, Paul is with the AASD. I don't have this binder you referred to see. I mean, I have the package 19 is what we're talking about. Anyone out there to follow along? Item 5, gas line repair at Stradero Creek appears to be a utility item, wastewater and water pipelines, and the policy it's referred to is energy second, with utility department as the lead on the project.
And Aiken was suggesting that which of the comp plan would be more relevant?
What caught my eye was that it's currently associated with a program that's all electricity needs. And my first thought, oh, are we running gas-powered generating plant down there somewhere? And so did a quick through the command looking for other more likely section. And
Okay.
at 1.13.4 is the one that cropped up because it's specifically about a natural gas pipeline operations. So no urgency about this. I just wondered why it's done the way it was done.
I don't have an answer to that, and if no one else from utilities to answer that, then can't have tonight. But S13.4 I've had noted, and I can follow up with the utilities staff tomorrow.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So, sorry, Paul Harper, Office of Management and Budget. So we rely on the department to actually align with the comprehensive plan. So I believe the person who did that's actually not here this evening. I will say if that's correction that is recommended, I would include that in the letter to the Finance Committee, and we can make correction as part of the adopted budget for that project page.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question for Mr. Harp. Notice that there were several of the same new CIP that don't hit the fiscal 25 budget. And somehow my recollection is the last time we did this, that most of the time that projects do. So is it a planning exercise that it's because, for example, if you look at the children that are lighting system, there's nothing till fiscal 20 and 29. And so is it just we know that this is that's coming down the pipeline that we're planning ahead for it?
Yes, essentially, yes. 5-year capital plan is a plan where we get to in need of items that we are coming along. Ideally, we try to get them in there as early as we can when we have information that is accurate and we can program dollars and spend timeline. A lot of the time things kind of pop up as somewhat emergencies, and so a number of them fall into the first couple of years, but when possible, we do put them in there as far out as we can, just so that we have the plan in there. You know, things move around. I will say council adopts the budget. They are adopting the first year of the 5-year plan. In this case, it would be 2025. The rest of these are used for planning. Essentially, we reference to them if there are changes made into the next 5 years. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, they are put in there with the idea that we want to plan ahead as we can.
Thank you. And then I had a little bit more of a specific question about the third new CIP, which is the Palo Alto Art Center ceramic equipment. And this is on page 18. There's a note that the Art Center has not had a sustainable plan to maintain equipment for the ceramic program, like nearby municipalities. I'm wondering, is that going to be something we're changing, or is this just going to be kind of a wham Band-Aid? Mr. Doe, you're on mute.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lamo, Superintendent with Space, Parks and Golf, running community services. The maintenance of the ceramic equipment is funded at the time. We are asking for the facility to be upgraded and some of the equipment to be used. And then from there, we will be planning, looking at how we want to in the future main or plan for reaching that budget, but we haven't reached that point yet. So we're asking for funding to up and replace the equipment that's it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go in because I'm not seeing other hits. One more question about the number 6 city radio replacement program. Question about this is the report on page 19 notes the replacement program will be first time digital radio and replaced since the city joined the regional interoperability authority. So I'm wondering, just for context, was that? Did that take place? I remember that it was in the news, but
Paul Harper with the management budget. I will throw out a date, but I would quote me on this. I will say it was in like 2014 or 2015 is when we started the replacements previously.
Thank you. Okay, and I think this is my the last question. So number 13, or packet page 21. This is regarding the stormwater improvements, the capacity upgrades. When I'm looking at the binder, unfortunately didn't know what page this all was in the binder. I noticed that Lewis Road slated for 2029, so much later than these two, which are earlier. And so my question is it because these kind of emergency or sudden more urgent improvements because of the thing, or what's like it jumped in line, so I was wondering what happened there.
Yes. Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Holly Boyd. I'm the Assistant Director for Public Works. Yes, it's the latter. This road was previously in the budget to work on next out of the Teen Stormwater Fund priority project. Given the New Year's Eve flooding in 2022, We prioritized Hamilton and Center over Lewis and pushed Lewis out because of the impact will have on the residents in those neighborhoods.
Okay, and then I also, in terms of when the thing is really be used for the part for the Hamilton system upgrades and the drive capacity upgrade, it looks like the Hamilton system happens first. Right? And is staggering simply a flow management issue or a budgetary issue, or because if they're urgent, that's what I was wondering about. What's the timing base?
It's both. We have a limited number of staff, and we also collect the stormwater management fee on an annual basis. So the Hamilton Avenue system is prioritized first. Design will be starting in July once this is approved, and then construction the following. And so while we could have asked for a loan from the general fund or something like that, it's a workload issue because limited staff, and then also the decision to the hoods because they are in the same neighborhood. We're staggering that to follow year by year.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have questions from Commissioner Liu. No? Commissioner Suma?
I had a question, had an interest in numbering the eucalyptus tree removal as well. And I'm just wondering, our CIP descriptions, when you look them up on their by page number, the big binder don't tell you much more than the summaries do, a little more information. And this program I have sort of negative feel about, but I'm wondering where one can look and find the exact locations of the tree slated for removal and a little more about the process of this. And if you direct to it, I can just that offline. I don't know the whole mission needs to hear about. Like the stumps are going to be ground out, or if the stumps will be left and they'll be treated with some kind of chemical, these kinds of details. Where do we find that?
Commissioner, so this is Lomdo again, Communities Department. The assessment was done between Community Service Department and the Office of Emergency Services to identify the trees that we would like to have removed. I can provide information to staff liaison French, and then from there she can forward it to you.
Okay, thank you. That'd be very helpful. Was the Urban Forestry Department involved?
That is correct.
They were. Okay, so you maybe said that. I didn't hear that. Okay.
Multiple departments. Office of Emergency Service, Urban Forestry, and Community Services.
Okay, thank you very much. That would be helpful.
Commissioner Templeton?
Thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner Suma. I also did this one, but for a different reason, and I would hear what concerns you have if you don't share them. Don't necessarily assume want to know. My understanding is that eucalyptus trees provide a air hazard for communities in which they're present. It's not mentioned really. Oh, there it is, fire safety. Yeah, so is that under safety? PG? What does PG mean?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Templeton. Each CIP is identified by nomenclature, 2 letters, and then there's a 5 digits. The 2 letters first just represent the program where the CIP is managed, and PG in this case is parks, and which falls under Division of Open Space and Golf.
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, so I just a little closer and listening to Commissioner Suma's concern, like if this was a fire safety program, I think that would make a lot of sense to me. And I guess we'll hear from planning department since you're the ones who classified them. Is that what the speakers are for?
Yes, Chief Moitra is not here this evening to tell you her thinking about a particular one. You're looking binder. I don't have binder, the packet.
I'm not looking binder. I'm looking at the packet.
Okay, can you send which?
9, eucalyptus removal.
Page 20.
Thank you, Chair.
So I heard Lomdo that he has some bills he will send that I will forward to the Planning and Transportation.
Yes, that's what I was asking you to confirm. Yeah, if you'll do that, that'd be great.
Of course, I will do that. As I receive it, I will forward on to the TC.
So concern here is how are the trees being removed if they're being safely, and does provide protection, so therefore classified properly and improperly. Thank you.
And if I could add to that, it's the departments will work together in regards to managing the project. Just because identified initially as one PG, it may or may not read there. We at times, depending on the complexity level of the project, collaborate with the departments, transfer projects to other departments as well.
Wonderful, and I agree. I'm glad that we're closer at this, but specifically, the community is going to have a different feeling about removing trees in parks versus improving safety. So I think it's just something about. Thanks.
Okay, one clarifying question for me. This is page 21, number 15, the scheduled bill and equipment replacement that we see every year. So my question is, I was looking in under at the item, the expense was pretty much the same every single year, except that in 2029, it jumped up by about $600,000. And so I'm wondering if Eddie could give a visibility into why it's happening. I don't know which number it would be. Oh, hello.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nitra Ballman, Public's Fleet Department. I get this question. In full year 2029, I'm sure what budget total is that you have, but we have approximately $3.5 million allocated for replace that year. Is that you're showing?
I didn't bring my binder, but if I remember correctly, it was about $3.5 million a single year, and then in 2029 it jumped up like almost 2 million.
Yeah, 0.2.
Okay. So I will go back to that list. I'm actually looking off of the fiscal year 29 that I had submitted. I've got it's a $3.5 million. So let me get back to you on that. I don't know what if you have a list in front of you, but I really don't have that one.
I don't have the list. I guess I will say the city is in the process of working towards replacing the fleet with electric vehicle where possible. And we are trying to do that in the earlier time where possible, but going out to the end of the 5-year plan, increasing the dollar because those vehicles do cost more to place at this point in time. We're looking at kind of increasing the budget that we have the capacity to do that in the out year.
And that wouldn't be just FY29. Yeah.
Okay, great. It does answer. Sounds like there would be a ramp up in EVs purchase place non-EVs in 2029, and that's why we're budgeting more for it. So my next question would, are we replacing EVs? But it's like you've answered that. So thank you. And I think we've got one more question from Commissioner Suma. What? Okay, from Commissioner Liu.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to talk about item number 12, the Alma Charleston Road Crossing Safe Improvements. Looks like the budget is around $1.3 million over the next 2 years, but the design is only. I was wondering if someone could comment on what the broader scope and budget of the project would potentially be projected to be, and also if there's any scope or consideration of upgrading the crossing that could support a quiet zone. So yeah, I would appreciate any answers there.
It's like we have Philip Cummey. Great. Philip, did you hear?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is actually really similar to a project that PT had approved at Churchill. So just a very similar project to that we had Churchill Crossing. We are doing, entering the design phase, but we're, hoping in a similar to get Section 1 funding for similar to what we did for the Churchill Avenue crossing for this project to into the future big construction. And then the question about quiet zones. Oh, this is not the quiet zones project. However, we do have that project, which is already proceeding on. It's not on the same line. It's already forward. We're already starting to study for the other crossings. Then Palo Alto Avenue is in the final line phase.
All right, thank you. That's full clarification.
Okay, no more.
My pleasure.
See more lights from commissioners for clarifying questions. I wanted to see if there was any cards or public on this item or anybody online.
I have no speaker cards or raised hands.
Okay, since there are no public comments, If the commission has any additional comments, not clarify questions, but comments. I think we kind of blended everything this time. I would be curious, it sounds like since our job for this item is to ensure that each of these new CIPs are consistent with the comprehensive plan, and because Commissioner Aiken raised the issue that perhaps the line repair is kind of matched to a portion of the plan that might not be appropriate as a different one. I was wondering if Commissioner Aiken could share with us what the language is for the item you thought was more appropriate.
Sure. Really pretty simple. It says the item is enhance the safety of city-owned natural gas pipeline operations. So it's in the safety segment, the element of the plan rather than natural environment.
That seems to make sense. So let's see. And then we have Commissioner Suma.
Thanks, Chair. I support at least adding Commissioner Aiken's suggestion. That seems to be a really good idea. If reevaluating that, but for that seems like an appropriate change. And then to answer Commissioner Templeton, the eucalyptus tree removal I think is a very separate issue for open spaces and in public parks in the city. And I've always thought it was a bit weird in open spaces to target some eucalyptus tree. I don't think anybody should ever plant eucalyptus tree, but where they exist in wooded areas, often it's by creeks because like a bit more water. They were introduced in 1853. So they've been part of open spaces for a very long time, and they provide very valuable habitat, even though they're unwanted bees, but they are a fire hazard. And so that's why I was curious about what kind of methods they were using to remove the trees. If you're deep into, Foothill Park, in some locations it can be disruptive. In other locations, I feel it could be more disruptive and is it worth the effort of removing them. And I don't know if they fell the trees and leave them where they fall, rotting materials are very valuable in a forested area and provides habitat. So that's just, I thought it's not a hill I rely on to save the eucalyptus, but I think it's really important in urban areas where they're more likely to cause a problem, areas where it's more kind of I'm lukewarm as a value add to our natural areas. And I hate to see our natural areas overmatched, if that helps.
All right, thank you. Other comments? If not, I can take a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'd be happy to make a motion to move staff recommendation with the addition of Commissioner Aiken's comment or correction, I guess it is.
Second.
All right, do we have any
question for Commissioner Suma? You don't want to ask them for more information that you mentioned in your comments?
They're going to provide, but I don't think it needs to. This is a program already been going on to a certain extent. I just wanted to be able to know more about it myself.
Okay.
And actually, not all in open space. If you look in the big border, it's also in Eleanor Park. So I'm not against it. I'm neutral on it as being a benefit for our open spaces, but is something that the city has been doing. So.
Well, I think your point is well taken that there's not information for to get from what we have. So if you wanted to add it to the motion, if not, leave it as a comment and then let's take yours well meant.
If you'd like to add it as an amendment, it's fine with me. I wouldn't say no. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
You're the maker. I'm not worried about it. If you want to add, you can add it. And if not, okay.
Would my colleagues like to add that? Okay, then I would say I would add a clause as examine the value and cost of removing eucalyptus in open areas, value to the open space maintenance and cost to the city. Consider it, which
is the second accept change?
To me, it's more of a general issue of just providing information about what's being removed and where it's being removed. That to me, mine is more interested in that, actually, the cost breakdown.
I'm I mean, I don't know if you, or if you're saying you would accept it,
Oh, I would accept it, but I'm wondering if we should
word it
word
differently.
it differently, yeah.
Well, why don't you take a back at it?
Okay. Request that get more information about where and any eucalypts are being removed.
Well, I think it's also out, I mean, if they're going in with a large crew and dragging a giant tree out, it's really disruptive in a remote location in our open spaces. Whereas if it's long road, who cares in some way? So I think it's the details, the operational details, kind of.
How many, where, and how they're being moved.
Yeah. It's fine if you want to incorporate, that's fine. I mean,
Okay, so I'm going to restate the motion just so where we are on this. So we're moving the staff recommendation with the addition of Commissioner Aiken's reclassification for the alignment of the gas line repair at Stradera Creek, the comp plan, which was S1.13.4. And then also request more information on the location and method of removal of the eucalyptus trees.
that sounds fine.
Is there a discussion about this? Okay, then Ms. could you please call the vote?
Commissioner Ng,
Yes.
Chair Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Suma,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton.
Yes.
Motion carries 0.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next action item, which is ordinance of the Council of the City of Palo Alto amending chapters 18.14, 8.18, 18.30, 18.42, 18.52, and 18.77, and in chapter 21.11 of the Palo Alto Municipal Code to apply existing regulations to and implement state housing laws. Could we have this presentation, please?
Yes. Thank you. So this evening, in your report on the screen are showing 5 state laws. 4 of these went into effect, or 2 of these went into effect January 1st. Another one is going into effect July 1st. And 2 previously went into effect in their years. And we have been operating without changes to our code under state law. So we are taking the opportunity to make some applications to our code or request planning and transportation commission review of the changes. We will then bring to the council for adoption. So you can see here we have 3 of these, 2 from this year's effective bills and 1 from 2019 that require ministerial processes. So no discretionary permits required, no CEQA required for projects under these state laws. So this, just note that we do have existing zoning code chapters that provide streamlined review, plan reviews, and so we're relying on those sections as existing in our codes. Then we have parking items for, so under, go back to the slide, AB 894, AB 2097 are both related to parking. So we have a couple of changes to existing codes for that with, to address the loading and bicycle facility requirements, putting something about the parking agreements, and something in there about TDM programs as well, addressing AB 2097. And then we have some other items that related to just changes that were to be made, just clarifications, because we were taking the opportunity to do this. Sort of non-substantive changes. And then the last one there screen is we are anticipating council's action on the NV cap on June 18th. And so we are proactively coming forward with a session for night uses and activities that would add these zone districts that are in the NV cap. So when that council takes action on that, we have then in August, we'll come back with this these set of minutes revisions that would then facilitate night use and activity use in those new zones. So, Mr. Yang is here to weigh in on some adjustments here regarding EVSC related equipment and accessibility.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
So after the staff report was published, staff identified two additional non-substantive changes, or two additional changes, one responding to law and another being a non-substantive clarification. So the first one is a response to AB 970, which was out of last January. And that section requires these to reduce their requirements if a retrofit to install EVS would result in the lost parking space. So we had actually provided for this in our code, but we had some provisions could be read to conflict with AB 970. AB 970 doesn't have a limit on how many parking spaces can be removed to accommodate EVSE, and the cities did have a maximum of 10% of the existing stalls or one stall or greater. In practice, that it was not likely to come up, but just to avoid any confusion, we recommend change. Next slide. And the other change that came up after packet publication was clarification in our subdivision code to allow tentative map to be placed on the council consent agenda. This is something that the city staff has done with some regularity over the years. There's been some confusion about whether item on consent calendar could satisfy public hearing requirement. So we're trying to remove that confusion, just to say the city council simply needs to consider the map at a public meeting rather than the words public hearing. And that's also consistent with the state Submap Act, which refers to public meetings rather than hearings.
Jump back in as well on the SB 684, which I think could be of interest, being that it's kind of like the S9 that came through a few years ago. We prepared objective standards for the SB 684 projects, allow up 10 parcels, and allows a municipal planning entitlement process similar to S9. But this is just for multiple zoned properties of a certain size. And so we do have objective standards for 3 or more housing units that we use for those types of projects, have the SB9 objective standards. So depending on what projects we can use those in the interim. We do think we need to do some tweaking and create some SB 684 standards, objective standards, specific those types of projects as well. And then also have a process that we call the SB 680 process to come through with initial prelim designs to have conversations with staff through what they're going to submit formally. I think that is the last slide. So I'm going to take our slides back to this one with focus on the state law items. Perhaps if you would like to talk about the first.
Okay, so first let me ask the commissioners if they need clarifying questions before we take any public comment. So it's trying to clarifying questions. Commissioner Rectal, and then Commissioner Zuma.
If you go to slide 10, talk about this voluntary code review. Can you even detail exactly voluntary code review?
Yes, so a voluntary code review would be something that we, highly encourage people to come through. We do this with the individual program. It's not a requirement that they come to show their concepts for new two-story home in a neighborhood, but we really encourage it. We have a discussion, we look at the context, we talk through the individual review deadlines and how they're doing with their plans. So that would be an example of a voluntary process.
And they don't want to do it, they don't have it.
Correct.
But it add value because then they don't have to worry about seeing code.
Yeah, so the idea there, it's a carrot rather than a stick. It's suggesting that they will have more efficiency. We do finally put detailed develop drawings on paper submit for building permit if they've had preliminary discussions with staff before they hardline some of their choices, they not follow objective standards
Okay,
or other codes.
that's useful. Thank you. How does that differ from the ministerial planning and type process?
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah. So a ministerial entitlement process would basically just be a planning review objective standards, and it'd be established. But the main difference is applicants would have to come through the planning department before they want to get a permit. So they would have to come in and submit their plans, planning to check them against the objective standards. And then they would need to get approval, that entitlement from the department before going to the building permit process. So that's in contrast with the voluntary review approach where, you could go straight to a building permit and then plans will get checked against the objective standards as part of the building permit plan. But there's no first step, just the planning department.
Okay, but the ministerial planning seems pretty streamlined. It's not onerous. Why would we not want that?
Well, what we found with S9 is that it is a voluntary process, is useful for many applicants, but if you've got someone who's confident, we don't want to, require a process than is necessary.
Okay. Because we don't think that it's going to add to you, we're not going to catching. Is that the issue?
Well, I think we feel we often do, but we're trying to streamline our processes as much as possible.
Yeah, I understand. You don't want people jump hoops that aren't needed, but so if there's value added, and it's not terrible hard hoop to jump through it, there may be valuable sides. But
and
okay,
the voluntary process is all available, right? If it's not required.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Suma and then Commissioner.
I had a question about Senate Bill 84, and it has to do with it applies to projects with up to 10 homes or fewer with density criteria in allowing multiple families. And I find the code a little bit conflicting about whether RE, R2, and RD, which are described as low density residential uses, are the ants and multifamily. So the question really is, does multiple family residential use mean 3 units and more, or does it apply to RE, R2, RMD, the low density?
So I'll take a crack at that. The code defines single family residential as 3 or more units. And so that is how you think of that. The RM15, or sorry, now RM20, RM30, 40. Bert, would you cover that?
Yeah, that is the view that I would as well. I'll just double check one thing and I'll come back if I find something more.
Okay, thank you for that. And the next one, I believe, I just wanted to confirm what AMI Senate Bill 4 applies to 60 or 80 AMI.
I will check on that and to you as well.
Okay, thanks. And then, this is a question on page 27. It's also under Senate 5. At the top of sentence, at the top page, second sentence, it says no additional parking requirements be posed if the development is within half an hour of high quality transit or walk from a car share vehicle. And I wasn't sure what that one, I totally know what high quality transit is, but I was really confused about I think it's the way it's worded, or 1 block from a car share vehicle. Does that mean any shared vehicle that has to be parked someplace, or what does that mean?
So it's not clearly defined in the law, but we have interpreted it a similar provision in S9. We've interpreted it to mean there's a fixed location car share as opposed to a free floating car share. So something like a car that is located within 1 block. And we've also, in our SB9 regulations, defined, what is a block if it's unclear, a certain number of feet.
Okay, I think that could be more clearly. I was a little confused. And then I think I'll save my other question because I don't think it's just clarifying longer. So thank you for those questions, and I'll wait the answer to the first two.
Commissioner Liu?
Yes. One question, likely for Al. There were a couple references to SB9 here. I just wanted to very explicitly confirm what the city's thinking was on SB9 following the court decision.
Yeah. So the Redondo versus PTA decision held that SB9 was not enforced us to charter fees, but the procedural status of that case means that it's effective for the 5 charter cities that were parties to the litigation. And the cities have also asked the court to declare SB9 unenforceable for all charter cities throughout California, but the court hasn't made that ruling.
Thank you.
Just to clarify then, the court hasn't made that decision or ruling yet, so we're waiting? Is that?
Right. We're waiting to see how court rules on that request. And then beyond that, once that's kind of the last for the trial court to take is to rule on that issue. Once that happens, and the state can also appeal the ruling and ask for it to be stayed. So that's also determined.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple clarifying questions. So for B684, I just want to clarify my understanding or confirm my understanding on packet page 26, where it says there are cities to allow to the Mullen densities. So does it mean that if something is zoned, for example, if something is zoned RM20, we have to allow it to become RM30 if that's what the developer wants, and if it is up to units and for 5 acres, is that what it means?
Right. So you have to allow up to 30 units per acre. That density it doesn't get the RM30 development standards. Is that we need to allow that density.
That's helpful. Thank you. And then this is a question I pre-meeting, but I wasn't 100% sure on it. So the description about SB 84 says requires project provide the number of projected units first identified in a housing element. And so if a developer chooses to develop less than is projected housing element, then the development is not eligible to go through the SB 84 process. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then clarifying question about Senate Bill 4. I just wanted to make sure I was reading this correctly. So it says ancillary floor uses are also permitted, and things like the child care centers, etc., are allowed only on the ground floor, correct?
I believe that's right.
Okay. And then finally for Assembly Bill 894, on packet page 27, when would it be used? I'm trying to understand what a shared parking agreement looks like.
Yeah. So I think the vision that the legislature had was you'd have a parking lot that is someplace and an adjacent lot wants to redevelop, and the adjacent lot wants to redevelop without providing parking on it. So the lot that wants to redevelop would approach their neighbor and say, hey, I'd like to do a study showing that your parking spaces are utilized, and I'd like to share them with you. And then they would have to prepare that parking study showing that, that the parking is in fact underutilized, and that the uses, the timing which the parking will be in demand for the sharing to properties that are sharing it wouldn't conflict.
Okay, but then ultimately it's up to those two property owners to come to an agreement about how that
right
work, except that city would then have to approve it. Okay, sense.
Right.
And then I actually have one more question. This is packet page 28 relating to AB 297. And this question came up before, I think, in the context of retail discussion. And it was regarding, so the law says that it doesn't have requirements for ESC or ADA parking spaces, but that Palo Alto's interpreting our approach is to only require these spaces when developer is voluntarily providing spaces. Is that something that we can change? Or, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah. So this is an area where the law is somewhat ambiguous. What does it mean that AB 97 doesn't affect EVSE and ADA requirements otherwise would apply? And we've seen cities take differing approaches. The majority approach, I believe, is the one that Palo Alto has taken, which is ADA and EVSE requirements apply as a percentage of the parking that you provide. And so if you're not providing any parking, there's percentage to take. Other jurisdictions have, I think a minority of jurisdictions have looked at what is the parking requirement, the base parking requirement, pretending that AB 297 did not exist. And then the percentage of spaces to find the number of EVSE and EA spaces that would be hired, and then require that those spaces be provided. And so you would only be providing ADA and EVSE spaces, and there would be no other spaces, general parking space provided.
That would make more sense.
So.
Thank you for explaining, and then I'll save the rest of my comments about it to later. Are there any other clarifying questions? Okay, so then are there any comments? I think I see a thing online.
Yes, I have one speaker card from Herb Bora.
Okay, great. Hello.
Hello, Commissioners. I also had a question about the status of City of Redondo Beach based on SB9. That is that we have programs and policy in the comprehensive plan, regulations, and the zoning code to implement that law, which at least for 5 cities and maybe for our state will be declared unconstitutional for charter cities like Palo Alto. And it's to me, to be prepared now, if that is the case, have changes to restore those policies and programs and regulations to what they were prior to the enactment, and also consider how that affects the way in which we meet regional housing needs assessment quota. That is, to be continuing to suggest, changes this evening when we're not sure whether that is still legislation that we're required to buy, and that was the rationale for changing our comprehensive plan, our zoning ordinance. And it seems to me we shouldn't just let those things stand, but rather be proactive so that, just as the legislature sometimes has bills which take effect at a late date, and if you look code, the statute for a particular code, you see where it will show both what law is up to as a certain date, what it would then do in a future date. And here we would be having that, and at those changes, if or when a final decision is made that it is unconstitutional, that we already have those changes, restoring the language ready. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, commissioners, any comment about the item? I got Commissioner Dahl and then Commissioner Suma.
Question for Albert about the public speakers. The SB9, when we implement SB9, do we contingent on SB9 being law, or is it just have we changed the law to be consistent with it?
So our SB ordinances do have a provision saying that it will no longer be effective. Our ordinances will be void if SB9 is substantially amended or repealed. So we do some language that might come into play here, but I'll note it doesn't speak to what happens if law is invalidated by it. It doesn't specifically say that.
Particular if it's invalidated for just certain cities, then
right.
It seems kind of special case. So your opinion is that our ordinances would not change if it was invalidated by the court?
It's something we have to look more carefully if that decision does extend to the state.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Suma, and then Hickman, and then Aiken.
Thank you, Chair. So, and to the chair for asking a question about the ADA issue came up for me at a previous meeting as kind of tangential issue. But I think if we have latitude within the law to still provide ADA spots close to the location, we have a responsibility to do so. I'm sure our attorneys have looked at this stance is consistent with federal law, but I see no reason. It really bothers me that we not do this when we can if we have the ability to do so legally. So I will just say that. And then I'd also like to thank Vice Chair Reckdolf asking the question about kind of a get out of jail free clause at the end of ordinances. I think that like any of these ordinances that were imposed on cities, perhaps unknowingly by some at times, I think they should have a clause so the minute they are such that is clear that the minute they no longer considered legal requirements by the state, we have it written into the ordinance that we will abandon it at that they become null void, whatever the legal language is at that time. So I have strong preference for a change in to require ADA spots if it's legal to. I think that's the biggest takeaway for all of this for me, because the rest of this we have to do. And I had a lot of questions about 8 and 4, so thank you for asking that. I forgot to ask, but I think you clarified it, because I read this so many times where I could realize when it would be used, and I came up with the exact thing, an existing development. And the one thing of this that I think is kind of funny is that we're at a situation, and I know this is extremely true in the research part, where because of the long-term leases, the buildings are still leased, but people aren't showing up and looking at them. And so this is an act of what we don't know of COVID work home, and we don't know how to predict how much of that stay. And so I think a snapshot time of what 20% vacancy is may not be at all true some in the future. So I think we have to be very careful about how we evaluate this vacancy in the sense that we don't know, have no way of knowing now if those buildings will be fully occupied by employees. I have, friends that in the research park, and they have the same amount of square footage, hundreds of thousands of square feet, and there's 25 people working the whole thing. So that we have any choice, but in as much as we can be strict in our evaluation of aims of underutilization, I think we should, or that it should be short-term enough. If the conditions change, that really change it. That can be reevaluated. And I do think that car share vehicle needs to be defined better to be clearer. And I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you, Chair. I've got just a few questions and sections and comments on the ordinance itself, and I'm wondering if they can pull up the ordinance at page 31.
Maybe while we're waiting for the ordinance to be pulled up, I want to circle back with Mr. Yang to see if he had an answer to the outstanding question about the 60 versus 80 AMI, and then also sort of what happens to the low density residential.
Right. So the low density residential, I believe the answer is still what Ms. French stated earlier. It would not apply to those R2, RE districts. As for the affordability provisions, I believe it is, they have to be offered households who make up to 8% of AMI, but then the rent is limited to 70% of AMI.
Thank you. Okay, I got the ordinance in front of now, so take it away, Commissioner.
Remind
Right.
me, please, which page, second page?
31. Yeah,
Okay.
you're there right now. So scroll up to the recitals. You're at F. There in section 1. We're basically holding into our ordinance 5 state laws, and here in section 1 we reference there's actually 4 of them. We didn't reference AB 894, and so I just wanted to put that out to staff. If it was intentional, you had a reason, that's fine. If it was an oversight, you might want to, since you're sort of teeing up each of the other 4, you might want to AB 894. Next, let's go to packet page 34. And I want to go to 181462. That'll be before that, yeah. Packet page, so it probably there. Right at the down a little bit. I think it's right at the top of the 4. Here we go. All right. So I'm looking at this first vision here that for the applicable housing, we get they use the development standards for the RM30, except there's a call out for FAR. So I wanted to just ask, I'm sorry, I probably could look this up. What is the FAR for RM30?
I would have, I'm sharing the screen, so I'd have to look that to what it is. I built this 1.2 relates to housing element implementation ordinance, and it escapes me now which action that led us to this 125, but it relates to and Al, perhaps you
So yeah, the FAR for the R30 district, this FAR is 0. Sorry, yeah, 0.6.
0.6. Oh, so we're actually by virtue of this provision allowing the development standards for the M30, but the FAR, roughly.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Since the purpose of this legislation is driving us to do this is to promote additional housing, that's not going to run afoul, right? If we're not below their limit, can be above it.
Right. And this that 1.25 number is taken from the standards and the RM30. This whole set of standards is taken from our treatment of housing opportunity sites in the R1 districts.
All right, and I think that's what Ms. French is alluding to, is this really is a tie into our housing element to our arena goals. Okay, all right. Next at the top of page 35, so one more page. Let's see, where we're talking about the let's see. Yeah, the TDM. So, you know, I was kind of interested in this. When projects come through that were seeking a relief from full compliance with our parking standards, we've routinely responded with a requirement for a TDM, and that makes perfect sense. You know, our code says how much parking we think you're going to need. You're saying less. Well, you know, we need some protection there. And so it occurred to me as looking at these new state laws that allow in certain circumstances to eliminate parking, that would always want a TM. And so really I was wondering, Mr. Yang, if there's some background on this. The state is adopting low parking regulations. Is there dialogue in the intent of these statutes about encouraging TDMs, that's really the way we want to do this, or you know, limiting TDMs as kind of restraint? Is there a flavor that's coming out of the state on TDMs?
To my knowledge, there's not really discussion of TM. It's just sort of a policy direction that, you know, if you don't provide the parking, then it won't be used.
Okay, all right. Well, it makes sense to me in the context that we're doing it, and so I was just curious about that. Toward the bottom page, if we can go to my last one, 18.52040, right here. And my issue is I'm looking for feasible. This in part D, very feasible. I always get nervous when I see the in an North Street because it is potentially fertile ground for agreement and slowing things down to accommodate and resolve that disagreement. So do we have a definition anywhere in our code of what feasible means? Do we have a different word that we more normally use and it's defined? How will applicant know whether it's feasible or not? If I cut down a tree and provide loading space to make it feasible.
Yeah, this may be an area where we can just get rid of that where feasible, and have it be a requirement, and rely on a adjustments exception process.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd like to consider that. I don't that I want to make it part of a motion because, as you say, you may have to trail it through the code to sure that would work, and I don't want to, best to something that might not work. But I would like staff to look at that. And those are my question comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank Commissioner Aiken.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points here. So we're on packet 35. Let's start that first. In 1852.04, there's a typo. At least appears to me that there's a typo.
Yeah.
But being a bicycle parking facilities should be and. I wanted to reinforce my appreciation for the required TDM plans for the 2097 projects. Very happy to see that. I had one concern that Commissioner Soon comments about 894 raised in mind. The difference between a project that has absolutely no parking at all and that has the required otherwise required ADA and ESC space might be really significant because you might have to provide driveways and other space requiring features of the design otherwise wouldn't exist. So I'm curious as to whether they might regard that as a strain on production. And that's all I have for this. Thank you.
So, like my turn now. I alluded to earlier, have concern about the lack of EVSC and ADA parking. And it's not just ADA from also EVSC because as part of the regional ad hoc, we saw that it primarily two areas in the city that are going to be affected by AB 2097. And those areas of the city for us now are pretty much built out. And I believe our plan regarding getting EVSC spaces into those areas of the city was to sort of slowly get them in as people rebuild, remodeled, whatever. But if we're not allowed to put any additional parking requirements in, and our interpretation of the law is that we're not going to ask people to put in any EVSC spaces, then my concern is that we won't be preparing our city's infrastructure adequately in areas of university and CalApp, and I think that's pretty important. So I wonder if there is a way for us to put that EVSC parking back in. And similarly, I do have the same concern about ADA parking because if we have a new building going up, we can't have a city just, if these areas become denser, it's not going to be very accommodating if we don't allow visitors who have ADA needs to not be able to park, or for shoppers who have ADA needs to be unable to shop. And so we've got to I think it's short-sighted to not plan for those needs. So I'd be curious what the other commissioners think about this, and also would like to know from Yang if it would be reasonable to recommend a modification, and that it's not a specific, what's agenda is implementation of this law, but there's a little bit different from that. So I didn't know if it's outside the scope. And I also hear Commissioner Aiken's concern about requiring, just one ADA spot or just one ESC spot might also have unforeseen consequences. So I'd be curious to hear what commissioners have to say about that. Mr. Yang?
Yeah, so, I don't think it's beyond the scope of the agenda item. But I also don't think staff is prepared to weigh in on that discussion tonight. So it is something that PTC could do, but I think staff would probably appreciate the opportunity to have a fuller analysis.
So when does this item go to City Council? Or what's slated for City Council?
We didn't have it slated to go in June for their break, as with so many other items. So we have luxury of some time if needed, if you wanted a portion of this or this discussion on this particular to come back.
My perspective is I would like staff to take a look at it and staff have a perspective of this and maybe give us some information on it because it's a pretty big deal for long-term planning. But again, I'd like to hear what other commissioners have to say about it. And we'll go to Commissioner Templeton.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm up to a study session as well, and I really like your questions that I've been hearing tonight. I've been thinking about it. Before I moved here, I lived in a city slightly larger than Palo Alto, maybe a few thousand larger, but along the same order of magnitude. And it already built up 1,000 years ago, so there was no adding spaces. And one of the things that they've done that I thought was so interesting in these shopping areas and downtown, like sub-downs, is they thought about parking differently. They thought about parking as a zone and not on a per property basis. And I thought that was really interesting because they were able to get more parking, more facilities for the parking, but also because of how structured their pedestrian zones, they were able to have certain types of vehicles permitted to drive closer to the properties. And that was a really cool way to solve it. So for example, there'd be a pedestrian zone in a shopping district. It would have a space for a tiny little that would just around this area and provide people access to get from their parking facility to their destination very close. And of course, all those vehicles were out for ADA accessibility. So I thought that was an interesting approach. And one of many, I'm sure, if we study it better and closer, we have a variety of different approaches that might be able to be an innovative and interesting solution for Plata. Thanks.
Commissioner Rickdahl?
To answer your question, I feel strongly about handicapped because you can't have handicap parking a mile away and be useful for the handicap. EVSC I'm more flexible on. The city could have a bunch of chargers elsewhere. And the problem is that if they don't do that, you really need to distribute it within properties, but that's not the solution. The other solution could be clustering, but clustering of handicapped work.
Commissioner Suma?
I had more question on page 35, which is the draft ordinance, and it's in 1852-040D also, and it's the new part says where feasible projects providing blah blah. At least what I'm asking about is it only has to provide at least one on-site short-term load space for passenger vehicles to use by taxi cab and similar transportation and delivery services. Are we limited to one space for all of that, or can we require more spaces for larger buildings with more use, especially given that they may be parked or not parked depending on where they are in the city, and that there's so many term load and delivery for goods and persons. So are we limited to one, or can we acquire more, or?
We're not limited to one. So you can see the existing language said at least one for structures with 50 or more dwelling units. And so we were just extending that policy.
I can imagine this being really inadequate under certain scenarios for these applications that we are seeing, especially in areas with restricted parking. So I don't know if my colleagues are interested in maybe having a standard, if one's considered adequate for 50 or more units, what it's 100 units, what if it's more? So that doesn't seem adequate to cover all the situations.
I agree with Commissioner Smith there. I think if we're going to require something like that, then we can say for every 50 dwelling unit, like round down or something, which is what we usually do, right? So that would seem to fit the spirit of what we're trying to do and accommodate for larger developments.
Great. We would also appreciate a PC comment on whether one for any project that's using AB 2997 might be too much because AB 2097 could be utilized by a site of very short frontage and maybe without much ability to provide things off street.
Well, maybe there's a way to find more discretion to evaluate this on a case-by-case basis within the law, because that's a good point too. If there isn't enough, I mean, we're really loading spaces, as unimportant as they seem to sound, I think really, really important. And when you don't have loading spaces, the only other thing you get is double parking and unsafe situation for people to exit and enter vehicles if the passenger loading. So I don't know how much way we can have with state laws to have this be adjustable on a per project basis.
Well, I'm a little confused here because it says residential and mixed use structures with 50 or more dwelling units. 50 or more dwelling units, it's going to be quite large. So it should have enough frontage to accommodate one spot. It'd be a very tall and structure. So I don't think it's like it's too much, unless I'm not understanding like where these lots would be.
The question was more about the additional language was for any product that's using 2097. We would be saying it was feasible to provide this off-street space, but again, as Commissioner Heckman suggested, where feasible, I think it solves the problem of what if you have a small frontage, it's a small site, but it raises other issues around implementation.
Maybe what we can do is study that as well, along with the EVSE and EA issue. It seems like, I mean, looking at Cal Ave, for example, we have a bunch of very small storefronts. We don't, if every single one of them and providing parking, we don't need the entire street to be filled with the loading zone. So I think we need to think about that. I was reading a paragraph in Clay, so thank you for clarifying that for me. So I would suggest that we look at that a little bit more, because maybe it's some mix of ADA, EVC, and loading zone spaces. One question I had for Mr. Yang is, right now, when parking is required in the Cal Ave or university area, isn't the case that if the property owner didn't have the space to do it on, they were able to pay into fund? Isn't that right?
That's for university. University Avenue area allows in lieu fees to be paid into parking.
Okay, so maybe what it is then is that, and so now we would require those fees at all for University Avenue. Is that correct?
That's right.
So maybe what it is that there's an in lieu fee for EVC and ADA so that we can put those into our parking structures. Like EVSE costing. So that would be a good use of that, I think, and shouldn't be onerous. That's just an idea for the study session. Okay, we got comments from Commissioner, I'm not sure who was, I think Commissioner Liu and then Rectal.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with the study session. It is hard to really picture and project what requirements are appropriate. Not to prelude that too much, but could we get some context on the history of the one spot for 50 units? And can we also clarify whether loading like a white stripe on the sidewalk as loading or kind of a loading zone in Italy or something similar could satisfy or has been used to satisfy this requirement before.
So just refer to the existing code section regarding loading that yes, on-street loading, as long as it conflict with common goals and policies related to site planning, circulation, and access. So this was in the director's adjustments with a maximum action of one loading space. So it allowed for a kind of administrative process to make that determination, unrelated to 50 units that just existed.
Yeah, I think we're probably not prepared to speak to the 50 unit issue. It's something we can research.
Thank you. Yeah.
Commissioner Rickdahl.
I agree. I think we should have a study session, but also some data. What is demand? What's a reasonable? What's practice for providing parking and loading? I don't know what's 50, 25, 75. No idea right now. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have other comments? Because I'm not seeing anything. Commissioner Heckman. Sorry, I thought it was a ghost town. Commissioner Heckman, go ahead. Commissioner, you're on mute.
Thank you. So I'm hearing some discussion of a session, but that relates to what we want to do with recommending this ordinance. And I think we've just heard that we have some time. So I'm wondering if we really want to bring this back as a study session, or just big a study session. We can move forward a recommendation. Do we really want just have a bold staff report looking at the issues that have been raised tonight to come back to us, so that we might be able to, at that next meeting, make a recommendation moving this forward to council? So it's really just more of a next step in the process question.
Thank you. So my thought on this is that I think we've got agreement for the vast majority of the ordinance. So I think it would be most productive if we could at least approve the staff recommendation with the exception of certain items that will come back to us, and they can make a recommendation about to approve the remaining sections. Just so that when it comes to us, we're not reopening the whole thing discussion again, and we can keep our discussion focused. Does that make sense? Is that a good way to proceed?
Yeah, we'd appreciate that.
Okay, somebody like to take a stab making a motion?
Would it, if I share screen again, the ordinance itself, so we can go section by section of the ordinance? Or has any?
My preference would be hear from people who want to pull stuff out, because I mean, I'd be happy to have the studies either way, to be honest. Like, some of these things need to move forward so that we don't get behind schedule. So if there's somebody who feels strongly that there's stuff you pull out, pick up.
Where did it go? I think it pertains to sections. Wait, I have to find.
It pertains to section 18.52.040.
Does that want us to cite sections or just topics?
The topic is sufficient. We'll work with that.
So that will make it much easier to make a motion. Does somebody want to stab at a motion?
Okay. I would say that we move the staff motion with exception of coming to a study session that would. Okay. With exception that we would come back for a study session to talk about ESE parking, handicap parking, and also zones.
A second.
Want to add in Commissioner Heckman's suggestions as well as part of that motion?
Does that have to be part of the motion? That he was just asking staff to scrub that. Commissioner Heckman, what do you?
Yeah, so the first, just a recital, and this one I think is actually up in the study session, because the my last question was about on that 1852 OD, which I think is going to come back that, where feasible. I think that's going to be part of the study session. So I don't think we need to wrap it in, and, staff has liberty to, bring up things in an ordinance, moves to council anyway. So if they decide that, for instance, in the recitals, 10 is necessary, they'd go ahead and do it without us making a motion, I think.
Okay, thank you. Then we have additional discussion on the motion. Then we've got a motion from Commissioner Dahl, second from Commissioner Templeton. Looks like 2 lights from Commissioner Suma and Commissioner A. Light.
I guess it's a question of motion maker, whether I'm concerned that staff would need to evaluate. My concern was about in the shared park agreements that we really need careful and add something of them needing to be reevaluating maybe on an annual basis if work patterns would change.
That's tricky because if you've allowed someone to build a complex to unshared parking and then now work patterns change, well, you're kind of stuck, right? Unless you.
Well, I mean, I think if someone gets stuck as a consequence of not building parking, it's better that they should be stuck and they're going to start parking. I mean, so many neighborhoods around downtown and Cadillac, all of the neighborhood have parking permit programs, so you can't park there. So then I think there has to be a commitment to TDMs that work and other modes of transportation. I mean, I'm kind of, if you don't hold them to the commitment of shared parking, it's like having your kid eating it too, potentially.
I have a question for Albert. Much of this is dictated by state law. How much flexibility do we have with shared parking?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of flexibility around it. State law says the local agency shall approve shared parking to meet certain standards.
So if we wanted to put stipulation that survey that supports shared parking has to account for future work patterns or something like that, could that, or is that not allowed?
The state is actually pretty prescriptive on this. It says that we must approve the agreement if it includes a parking analysis using a peer-reviewed methodology developed by a professional planning associate. Okay. So I don't think that we can add on to the methodology requirements.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Commission.
I was taken aback by that it would be a study session rather than an action item. I thought we were leaning towards making a decision.
A study action, right? A session with action, correct. I would think that we have an action coming out of it. It wouldn't just be a session. So study seems a bad terminology to use.
Right. So do we need to revise our motion to make it clear that there will be?
I would say in a future action item as opposed to. It would just be a single action in our meeting. And it would not be a study set, but it would be an item
discussed in the usual way.
That'd be studied where we would study into a conclusion. The reason we use study session is there's so much we don't know now. And so we would be studying it, but I do agree it should be an action.
I will just chime with a opposing point. It doesn't mean I'm going to derail a motion, but what we're talking about is huge. Like, there's no way this is going to fit in one meeting and we're going to resolve on an outcome. Like, we're talking, we were talking about bringing ideas and creatives to approach this, and like other people have done, examining what our needs are. Dory was bringing up, like, I'm certain that's not a one conversation.
My view, if it's an action item, you always can defer it and say, let's get back to part 2 after 2 on this. But if we all talk about it and really come to consensus, I want the option to give a recommendation right there.
I like that. Most of the time when Sid brings an action item, it's very focused. Corral to get us down the path they want us to go versus coming up with a brainstorming approach. So anyway, either way, however we want to do it, it's fine. But if we want to just get to an action item, we got it in front tonight. But the staff's not here.
Yeah.
Well, my thought on that is that we do need to implement AB 297, so we can hold off if there's small tweaks we want to make, because we simply don't have the data. But to your point, Commissioner, then I think that, yes, we need to think more holistically and broadly about what do we do with our 2 major retail areas and parking needs for specific audiences associated with those areas. And hopefully some of that at least could be, but in the shortest term, we absolutely to push for the implementation of AB 2097 in a way that doesn't permanently put into place things that we correct. So can you?
So you're happy with the change motion? Okay.
Yeah, can you just restate motion, Commissioner Rexall, and then you can verify this?
Okay. We will have staff's recommended motion with the exception of returning for future action item that will cover EGSC parking, handicap parking, and loading.
Pertaining to these areas.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion?
Can I clarify, does the motion include the two sort of late items that were in the presentation? That was the reduction of parking spaces for EVSE and the tentative maps going on.
Well, the EC is going to be going, I mean, EC is going to be the future action.
It was
well, so the item in the staff presentation unrelated to AB 2097.
I'll put it up.
Okay.
Here. Okay. Sharing? Yep. Okay.
So it's about how to handle retrofits of existing parking spots.
Yeah, this is fine. Would include both these as part of the motion.
Great, thank you.
Approving both of these, recommending both of these.
And the seconder?
So this is part of the staff recommendation that goes forward, and though we don't have it with council, but anyways, not bringing this piece back. We talk about, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so to cap, it's everything with the exceptions that Rectal highlighted, but it's including the two late adds, and we've got the first and the second on this motion. Okay, it looks like I have one more comment, Commissioner Suma, right?
And I don't think the rest of my colleagues will agree. I think the whole thing should come back to us instead of being part of it, because it's not a very big section, but it's very changes. Why don't we read it all together in the final version staff is recommending? That would be my preference, but I don't know anyone else feels that way.
Which section do you have in mind?
I think the
All
whole,
right, which section did you have in mind specifically? I just guess as to how much.
I think the whole recommendation for changes should come back to us the next time with the subjects we've already expressed interest in changing, a few other tweaks.
I understand what your process is that, maybe second time around catch something, but I'm worried about getting unfocused. And I think having a more focused action would probably be more productive. I don't know what other people think.
I concur. I think I really appreciated the chair bringing that option up so that we can get stuff that is controversial off and time to really focus on other parking stuff and the ADA.
Okay, I don't see further comments. So then why don't we take a vote now?
Commissioner Templeton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Suma,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Aiken, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, wonderful. So on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes, the draft item minutes of May 8th, 2024. As revised.
I'll move the approval of said minutes revised.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have the vote, Ms. Al?
Chair Chang,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Aiken,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
In appreciation that after 4 years, other people making the motion as right. Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Abstain.
Commissioner Sa,
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0-1.
Great. Do we have any commissioner questions, comments, or announcements? All right. I call meeting adjourned.